I came home just before midnight, though the sky above my estate looked closer to dawn. The security lights flicked on as my car crept up the gravel drive, their motion sensors slow from disuse. I had been gone 3 months on business that meant nothing and earned everything. And the house waited for me like an accusation. Its windows black, its chimneys breathing faint curls of mist. I told myself I had returned only to check the place, to make sure the staff still kept it in shape. But truth sat heavy behind that lie. I couldn't stay away from Elisa's garden any longer. The moment I stepped out, I smelled it, wet earth, lilac, and something metallic beneath. The moon hung swollen, making the grass look silver, and that's when I saw her. Maria, my housekeeper, was kneeling at the center of the lawn, the hem of her uniform soaked through, her hands buried to the wrists in soil. Her back rose and fell in slow rhythm, like someone praying. At first I thought she was planting bulbs. Then she tilted her head toward me, eyes wide and glistening, lips trembling around words that made no sound. When she finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. "Mr. Cross, it's hungry again." I froze. The wind stopped. The only sound left was the faint hum of the pool filters. I took a step forward and felt the grass slick under my shoes. "Hungry?" I asked. My voice came out softer than I intended. She nodded without looking up. "It knows you're home." The garden stretched wide behind the mansion, once Elisa's pride. Rows of roses, jasmine, and white lilies that never bloomed after she died. I had tried to keep them alive for a year, then stopped caring. Now, under the moon, the flowers seemed to breathe, their stems twitching. I told myself it was wind, imagination, but the air had gone still. "Get inside," I said. "Whatever this is, stop." I reached for her shoulder. The ground under her hands pulsed once, as if exhaling. She flinched, yanked free, and backed away. "Don't touch it," she hissed. "You'll wake her." Her. The word landed like a stone in my chest. I dragged Maria inside. She shook all the way to the kitchen, refusing to meet my eyes. I poured a drink I didn't need and asked what she was doing outside at midnight. She didn't answer. Only after I raised my voice did she whisper, "She's still here." "She?" "Mrs. Cross. I can hear her in the soil." I laughed too quickly. Elisa's ashes were scattered in Italy. Maria shook her head. "Not all of them." Her words followed me up the stairs long after she went to her room. The mansion felt smaller that night. Every creak in the hallway echoed like footsteps. When I passed Elisa's old studio, the door was ajar. I hadn't entered it in years. The faint scent of paint and lavender lingered inside, dust floating through a slice of moonlight. Canvases leaned against the walls, half-finished, their colors dulled. On the main easel, a new painting stood, one I didn't remember. The garden, under full moon, every flower bending toward something unseen at its center. My name was scrawled in the bottom corner in wet paint. I left the room shaking. Sleep never came. At 3 a.m., the intercom crackled to life. A woman's voice, soft, distant. "Ethan, just once." I sat up, heart pounding, staring at the dark window where my reflection blinked half a beat late. I told myself it was interference, a glitch. The voice came again, lower. "Come outside." When I stepped onto the terrace, mist clung to the hedges. The path lights flickered, leading me back toward the garden. Maria stood there again, barefoot now, her dress soaked. "You shouldn't have locked the shed," she said. "She can't breathe." Before I could speak, the earth near the rose bushes shifted. Soil cracked, lifting like something underneath was pressing upward. Maria knelt, whispering in a language I didn't recognize. I wanted to run, call someone, anyone, but my legs stayed rooted. The ground split. A soft glow spilled out, greenish and warm, carrying the smell of lilies and iron. Inside the fissure, something shimmered, like hair moving in water. Maria reached toward it and winced. "She remembers you," she said. "She remembers what you promised." I stumbled back. The night blurred. My mind replayed Elisa's funeral, the priest's words I hadn't heard, the urn slipping in my hands. "What promise?" I demanded. Maria lifted her face, tears cutting tracks through the dirt. "You said you'd keep her garden alive." She smiled, a broken, haunted curve. "You did. You just don't know how." The light faded. The soil settled, leaving only the faintest hollow and the echo of her words. Maria slumped forward, exhausted. I carried her inside and left her on the couch. She whispered one last thing before drifting into sleep. "If you listen long enough, you'll hear her too." I sat alone until dawn, staring through the glass at the quiet lawn. The sun rose blood orange, catching on dew that sparkled like tears. Somewhere beneath that calm surface, I could swear I heard a heartbeat. The next morning, sunlight cut through the blinds like knives. The house was too quiet. Maria hadn't come down from her room, and the air smelled faintly of ash and lilies. I made coffee just to feel human again. But every sound, the hiss of the kettle, The creak of the floorboards felt wrong, like the house was mimicking life instead of living it. When I finally stepped outside, the garden looked dead. The flowers that had glowed with unnatural light were nothing but black husks, the air thick with rot. The pit was sealed, as if it had never existed. I told myself it was over, that Maria's exorcism, or whatever she'd done, had worked. But something inside me whispered that it hadn't ended. It had only gone quiet. I turned to go back inside. That's when I saw her again. Elise. She stood by the roses, wearing the same white dress she'd been buried in. The one she'd loved. The one I'd never seen again after the funeral. Her skin looked normal this time. Her eyes didn't glow. She looked alive. Too alive. My heart slammed against my ribs. "No," I whispered. "You're gone." She smiled faintly. "I told you forever." I stumbled back, shaking my head. "You're not real. You're a memory." She took a step forward, bare feet sinking into the soft soil. "If I'm just a memory," she said, "then why can you smell me?" The air was heavy with lilac and rain. I could hear the faint rustle of her dress. The warmth of her presence felt real. And that terrified me more than any ghost could. "Elise, please," I said, my voice cracking. "What do you want?" She tilted her head, eyes glimmering. "The truth." I froze. "You tell yourself I died of sickness," she said softly. "But do you remember what happened that night? The pills? The wine?" My breath hitched. "Stop. You said it was mercy," she continued. "That you couldn't watch me suffer. You told yourself it was love." I shook my head violently. "No, no, no." Elise stepped closer. "You crushed the pills, Ethan. You poured them into my wine. You held my hand until I stopped breathing. Then you scattered my ashes and called it devotion." The memory hit like a lightning strike. The glass of red wine, her trembling hands, the sound of her last breath, the garden lights flickering as I buried the leftover ashes beneath the lilies, too afraid to scatter them all, too guilty to let go completely. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. "I didn't mean to—" "You meant to forget," she said. Her voice was both gentle and cruel. "And the garden remembered for you." The ground beneath me trembled. The air thickened again. Black vines burst from the soil, coiling around my arms and legs. Not violent this time, but tender, almost loving. The scent of lilac was suffocating. "Elise, please, stop!" I cried. Her hand cupped my face, cold and soft. "You brought me back with your guilt," she whispered. "You fed me with every denial, every lie. You planted me with your sin." The vines tightened. My breath came short. I felt something warm trickle from my nose. Blood, or maybe sap. The world blurred. Behind Elise, Maria appeared suddenly, staggering across the dead grass. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. "Mr. Cross!" she screamed. "She's not Elise anymore. She's the garden." Elise turned her head slowly, eyes gleaming with green fire again. "No, Maria," she said. "We are." Maria raised the crucifix again, but before she could reach us, vines shot from the ground, wrapping around her throat. She gasped, clawing at them. I tried to move, to help, but the vines held me fast. "Elise, stop," I begged. She looked at me sadly. "You don't get to choose mercy twice." The vines jerked. Maria's body went still. The silence that followed was worse than her scream. Elise turned back to me, tears running down her face. "I loved you, Ethan," she said softly. "And I still do. But love like ours doesn't end. It becomes everything." The vines lifted me, pulling me toward her. I could feel them pushing beneath my skin, crawling through my veins. My heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the earth. The pain was unbearable. And then it wasn't pain anymore. It was warmth, familiar. As my vision faded, I saw the garden bloom again. Flowers bursting open, vivid and alive. Their petals were streaked with red. Elise kissed my forehead. "Now you'll never leave me again." Days later, the estate was quiet. The police found no bodies, just a house empty and clean, and a garden newly alive with color. The gardener who came to tend it swore he heard whispers among the flowers. Two voices, soft and loving, speaking as one, and at night, when the moonlight hits the roses, they say you can see two figures standing hand in hand in the center of the garden. Watching. Waiting. Forever. I don't remember walking outside. One moment I was standing in the darkened foyer, heart pounding in my throat. And the next, the cold air was on my skin, the grass wet beneath my feet. The moon hung low and enormous, pale and watchful. The garden glowed faintly, every flower pulsing like it was breathing with me. The scent was intoxicating, sweet, rotting. "Alive, Elise," I whispered again. She stood at the center of it all, her figure shifting between shadow and light, as though her body couldn't decide whether it belonged to the world of the living or the dead. The vines coiled around her like veins, their tips disappearing into the earth. Her eyes found mine, and for a moment, the night fell silent. "You came back," she said softly. I took a cautious step forward. "What are you?" She smiled faintly, her head tilting just the way it used to when she teased me. "What you made me." The ground beneath me pulsed again. I could feel it through the soles of my shoes, like the earth itself had a heartbeat. Every step closer felt heavier, as if the air was thickening around me. My chest tightened. "You're not real," I muttered, shaking my head. "You're a hallucination. A grief dream. That's all." Her smile didn't waver. "Then why are you shaking?" The vines around her shifted. They began to crawl across the grass toward me, slow but deliberate. I stepped back. "Stay away." "Elise is dead," I said, louder this time, trying to convince myself. "I buried you." Her expression darkened, the softness fading. "No," she whispered. "You left me. You didn't bury me. You forgot me. You left me to rot alone while you signed papers and toasted to your next deal. You wanted to forget the smell of my illness, the sound of my voice, the way I begged you not to leave." Her voice fractured, warping, echoing through the garden. The flowers bent lower, the ground trembling with her anger. I wanted to scream back that she was wrong, that I had loved her, but the words wouldn't come. The vines reached my feet. I tried to move, but the earth sucked at my shoes like quicksand. "Let me go!" I shouted, yanking at the roots. They clung tighter, curling around my ankles. She stepped closer, her face luminous in the moonlight, her voice soft again. "I kept you here, Ethan, all these years. You thought you left me, but I never left you. The garden, it was never mine. It was ours. I grew it to remember you. Now it remembers for both of us." Her hand reached for me. For a moment, I wanted to take it. The air between us felt warm, familiar. Then the warmth turned into a sharp pain. The vines dug into my skin, drawing blood. I gasped. The flowers nearest us bloomed suddenly, violently, petals bursting open and dripping with something dark and wet. "Elise, stop. You promised forever," she whispered again. "You said you'd never leave me. You didn't mean in life, did you?" "You meant always." Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned my head. Maria stood at the edge of the garden, holding something small and metallic. A crucifix. Her face was streaked with tears. "Mr. Cross!" she screamed. "Don't listen to her!" Elise's expression twisted. The vines around me tightened painfully. "She wants to take you from me," Elise hissed, her voice splitting into two tones, hers and something older, deeper. "She doesn't understand." Maria ran toward us, the crucifix held high. The garden reacted instantly. The vines reared up, snapping toward her like whips. One lashed across her arm, cutting it open. She screamed but didn't stop running. She reached the pit and plunged the cross into the soil. For a second, the entire world went silent. Then the earth screamed. The sound wasn't human. A deep, gut-wrenching roar that made the ground shake beneath my knees. The vines convulsed, retreating from me, writhing like wounded snakes. Elise staggered back, her form flickering. Her eyes widened in pain. "No!" she cried. "You can't take him from me." Maria shouted something, words I couldn't understand. Maybe prayer, maybe madness. The light from the cross grew brighter, blinding. Elise's outline shattered like smoke and wind. The vines collapsed, and the hum that had filled the air for days went silent. When my vision cleared, the garden was still again. The flowers lay wilted, blackened. The pit was gone. Maria was on the ground, trembling, the cross half buried beside her. I fell to my knees beside her, gasping for air. "She's gone," Maria whispered, voice shaking. I sent her back. But as I looked around the ruined garden, something didn't feel right. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, waiting. I helped Maria inside. She was pale, her arm bleeding badly. I cleaned the wound, wrapped it in cloth. Neither of us spoke for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was barely audible. "She loved you too much," she said. "Sometimes love doesn't die. It just grows roots." I wanted to believe it was over. But when I looked down, I noticed the faintest trace of soil under my fingernails, damp and alive. Later that night, I sat alone in my study, the fire burning low. I stared at my reflection in the glass doors. For a moment, I saw my own face. Then it blinked, half a second too late. And in the faint reflection of the garden behind me, I saw a woman's silhouette standing among the dead flowers, watching. I couldn't move. The figure before me shimmered in the moonlight, like something half-born of mist and memory. Elise, if that's what it was, stood barefoot in the garden, her skin dusted with soil, her hair falling in damp strands across her face. Her eyes were the same soft hazel I remembered, but behind them something pulsed, an unnatural glow, faintly green, almost like chlorophyll catching light. Elise? The name slipped out before I could stop it. She smiled slowly, that same serene smile she wore when she'd first shown me the garden years ago, when every seedling had a name and every bloom had a story. "You shouldn't have gone away for so long," she whispered. Her voice wasn't sound. It was vibration. I felt it deep inside my ribs. "The garden missed you." "I missed you." I stepped back, heart pounding. "You're not real. You died." Her smile didn't fade. "Does death matter if the roots remember?" I could barely breathe. The earth beneath her feet moved, subtle, rhythmic, like breathing. The flowers around her tilted toward her as if seeking warmth. When she raised her hand, petals from every bush began to drift upward, spinning slowly in the air. "Maria helped me," she said softly. "She kept me fed while you were gone." "Fed?" My voice cracked. Her expression shifted, almost tender. "You always forget what love costs, Ethan." Behind me, the back door creaked open. Maria stepped out, holding a jar, the last one from the shed. "She needs one more," she said quietly. Her tone was reverent, worshipful. "Maria, stop!" I shouted, but she didn't flinch. She unscrewed the lid, pouring the soil at Elise's feet. The air thickened. A sound rose, deep and resonant, like wind through a hollow tree. The ground trembled, and something like a vine slid from the pit, wrapping around Elise's ankle, then her wrist, as though claiming her. She didn't resist. She looked at me, eyes shining with something like sorrow. "I'm tired of being half alive," she whispered. "You promised forever." I lunged forward, trying to grab her arm, but my hand passed through her skin like water. Cold flooded up my arm, numbing everything. She tilted her head, studying me. "You can still keep your promise," she said softly. "Join me," I staggered back. "You're not Elise. I'm what you made me," she interrupted. The vines coiled tighter around her, sinking into the soil. For a moment, I thought she was being pulled under. But instead, the entire garden seemed to exhale. The flowers bent low, and the vines extended toward me. I turned and ran, stumbling across the gravel, the sound of the whispering plants chasing me. By the time I slammed the door shut, the glass was fogged with condensation. On the inside. Inside the house, the lights flickered again. The walls seemed to pulse faintly in time with that same heartbeat rhythm. The smell of wet earth filled every room. From the hallway came Maria's voice, soft and steady. She was singing. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with her eyes closed. Her hands were coated in soil. "It's almost done," she murmured. "She just needs to finish remembering." "Remembering what?" I demanded. Maria's lips curved into a faint smile. "You." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "What are you talking about?" "She died thinking you'd forgotten her," Maria said, opening her eyes. "You moved on. You buried her under flowers and walked away. But the garden didn't forget. She planted pieces of herself before she died. Roots, blood, ash. Enough to grow memory." I stared at her, my throat dry. "You're insane." Maria tilted her head, as if listening to something far away. "You'll believe soon. She's already inside you." I backed away slowly, heart hammering. "Stay away from me." But she didn't follow. She just whispered, "You'll see her again before sunrise." Upstairs, I tried to call someone. Anyone. But my phone had no signal. The house felt alive, humming faintly, as if the wiring itself carried a heartbeat. I splashed water on my face in the bathroom, looked up, and froze. My reflection wasn't alone. Behind me, Elise stood in the mirror's reflection, smiling faintly. I spun around. The room was empty. My pulse thudded in my ears. I backed into the hall and nearly tripped over something on the floor. A trail of damp footprints leading toward the studio. The same footprints I'd seen that morning. Against every rational instinct, I followed them. The studio door creaked open. Inside, moonlight pooled across the floorboards. The painting on the easel, the one of the garden, had changed again. The pit was gone. In its place stood two figures, Elise, and beside her, me, our hands intertwined. Beneath us, the caption read in dripping paint, "We are the roots." Something in me broke. I grabbed the canvas, tore it from the frame, but the paint bled through my hands like fresh ink. When I dropped it, I saw my own fingerprints had turned green. Downstairs, I heard a sound. Not Maria's voice this time, but laughter. Elise's laughter. I turned toward the stairs, every light flickering wildly now. The walls shuddered with the hum. The smell of earth was overwhelming, thick and sweet. By the time I reached the foyer, Maria was gone. The front door stood open, the night wind pouring in. Beyond it, the garden glowed. Every flower illuminated from within, pulsing like veins filled with light. At the center, something tall and human-shaped moved slowly, as if breathing. I knew that shape. "Elise," I whispered. The hum deepened. The ground trembled. The glass windows began to rattle in their frames. I took one step forward, and the lights went out. Total darkness. Then her voice, right beside my ear. Come home, Ethan. Morning didn't bring peace. Only daylight to prove I hadn't dreamed the night before. The garden looked ordinary again. Trimmed hedges and neat gravel paths. No sign of the hollow or the light. Maria slept late on the couch, her face streaked with dirt. The same faint smile fixed on her lips. When she woke, she acted as if nothing had happened. She made coffee, opened the curtains, and greeted me with her usual quiet, "Good morning, Mr. Cross," like she hadn't been whispering to the soil hours earlier. I wanted to fire her, to call someone and have her taken away, but curiosity hung heavier than fear. "What were you doing out there?" I asked. She stirred sugar into her cup. "You don't remember the garden's secret?" I leaned back, pretending patience. "Then tell me." Her eyes flicked toward the window. Not in daylight. I told myself she was delusional, but her calmness unnerved me. Around noon, I went to my office, opened my laptop, and checked the security feeds again. The cameras covering the garden had stopped recording at 11:58 p.m. The timestamp resumed at 12:11 with static that pulsed in rhythm, almost like breathing. Every few seconds, a faint whisper under the distortion, a woman's voice saying my name. I shut the laptop and unplugged the drives. By afternoon, the house began to feel restless. Drafts of cold air slid through sealed windows. A portrait of Elise fell from the wall with a sharp crack, the frame splitting down the middle. Behind the torn paper backing, I found a small metal key taped inside. The same old brass as the lock on the garden shed. The shed hadn't been opened since Elise died. It sat at the far end of the property, half swallowed by ivy. I hadn't even realized Maria had a key. The padlock clicked open easily. The hinges groaned like a warning. Dust floated in thin rays of light. Inside were Elise's tools, a half-empty watering can, and a wooden crate filled with glass jars. Each jar held soil and a tag marked with a date, every one after the day of her death. The topmost jar was from the previous week. Maria's voice startled me. She stood behind me, expression blank. "She made me keep feeding it," she said. I turned. "Feeding what?" "The roots. She said the soil would remember her if I gave it what she needed." Her words slurred slightly. Exhaustion or madness, I couldn't tell. "You've been putting something in the ground?" She nodded. "Ashes? Pieces? Memory?" I left the shed before she could say more, anger shaking my hands. But that night the anger cooled into unease. I dreamed of Elise standing at the foot of our bed, her hair damp, soil clinging to her skin. She smiled the way she used to before we fell apart. "I can still feel the sun," she said. "Come see." When I woke, the bedsheet smelled faintly of lilac and earth. At breakfast, Maria had vanished. Her room stood open, the bed untouched. Outside, the garden glowed with a faint haze of mist even though the day was clear. A trail of wet footprints led from the kitchen door to the roses. I followed them, heart hammering. Near the center of the garden, the soil had split open again, wider this time, a shallow pit filled with dark water. My reflection rippled, distorted. Then it blinked at me. I stumbled back. The pit shimmered, and beneath the surface I saw Elise's face, eyes open, mouth moving soundlessly. The same motion I'd seen in Maria the night before. When I reached out, the water trembled but stayed solid. My fingers came away slick with something that wasn't water. Thick, clear sap smelling faintly sweet. A low hum spread through the ground, vibrating up my legs. The nearest rosebush tilted toward me. Petals brushed my hand, soft as breath, but they left a faint sting like a burn. The stems twined together, weaving shapes that looked disturbingly human. I backed away, then heard a voice behind me. "You shouldn't have touched her," Maria said. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. "She's awake now." I demanded she explain what was happening, but she only whispered, "You called to her. She's been waiting." We stood in silence as the wind rose, rustling through the flowers. The sound almost formed words. My wife's voice, faint and broken. "Ethan, stay." I ran. Inside, I locked the doors, shut every curtain, tried to drown the voice with music. But the melody bent and shifted until it matched her hum. I threw the glass across the room, shattering it. Behind the music, I heard Maria crying softly, somewhere near the foyer. I found her sitting on the floor, clutching one of the soil jars from the shed. "She wants to see you," she said. "She can't rest until you come." I didn't answer. My hands shook too badly to speak. That night, every light in the house flickered off except one, the garden floodlight, shining directly on the pit. The hum grew louder, steady as a heartbeat, and under it a whisper. "Come home." By midnight I was standing at the back door again, the key still in my palm. I told myself I'd go out there only to prove there was nothing. No spirit, no miracle, just grief rotting into delusion. But when I stepped outside, the air shifted, carrying a warmth that felt like her arms once did. The garden glowed faint green, the pit gleaming at its heart. The soil rippled, and from it a shape began to rise. Delicate, pale, and familiar. My breath caught. It was Elise, or something wearing her shape, eyes full of light that wasn't human. She smiled. "You promised you'd keep me alive," she said. "You did."